She shot my daughter through the window, and now she's calling it an accident? That's what I said, to the officer, the neighbors, and to Lorraine Vexley, the smug president of the Willowmere Heights HOA, as she stood there with a revolver still warm in her holster. My daughter was inside, bleeding into a towel. Lorraine didn't even glance at the house. She was in plain sight, she shrugged, arms folded over her community safety vest. You can't prove I meant anything. I already did, I told her, kneeling over broken glass. That entry angle, 32 degrees, rising. That's not a ricochet, that's a target. And if you've ever lived in a neighborhood where a clipboard holds more power than common sense, subscribe now. Because what I'm about to show you isn't a story about rules. It's a story about the people who think they're above them, and how they fall. I'm Dr. Mason Elridge, retired FBI ballistics analyst. I've worked scenes in war zones and courtrooms. I've analyzed bullet paths through Kevlar, brick, and bone. But I never expected to map one through the double-pane glass of my daughter's bedroom window. Not in a gated suburb. Not 3 months after moving in. Lorraine fined us 3 times for the therapy clings on that window. Yellow suns, green frogs, little smiling moons. She called them decorative violations of community uniformity. Said they invited crime. Ava called them comfort. After what happened at her old school, Ava's therapist recommended trauma symbols on familiar surfaces, especially windows. It's part of something called narrative restoration, reclaiming a space. Lorraine didn't care. Her rulebook said white blinds only, no color, no clutter, no healing. I let the first citation slide. I emailed back about the medical exemption, got ignored. Then Lorraine started patrolling, not figuratively, literally. Walks after dark with a clipboard and a flashlight. Sometimes she wore a vest with security lead on the back. There is no HOA security lead. She fined the Gonzalez family for a tricycle on the porch, cited the Myers toddler for chalk drawings on their own walkway, and she kept coming back to Ava's window. We got a final warning slip 2 days before the shot. That night, I was adjusting the motion sensor in the backyard. Ava was upstairs. She'd just finished her sketch and turned the light off to read. The pop of the shot rang too clean, too sharp to be random. The sound cracked through the hedges and hit something deep in my gut. By the time I got inside, Ava was on the floor, clutching her shoulder, stammering. It came from the sidewalk, from outside. I ran out front, screaming for help, and there was Lorraine, gun holstered, calm, still wearing that vest. She didn't run, didn't call 911, just stood there, telling the cop she thought she saw a raccoon near the trash cans and fired a warning shot. But Ava's window faces the second floor, and the bullet tore through it at an angle that doesn't happen by mistake. I'll let the insurance handle it, Lorraine said, as Ava was loaded into the ambulance. Let's not make this bigger than it needs to be. I didn't answer her. I didn't need to. Because while she was covering her tracks with polite phrases and HOA jargon, I was mentally reconstructing the shot. Distance, elevation, trajectory. And I knew in that moment the science would bury her. That night, I collected the first glass shards from the floor, measured the slant of the bullet's travel by the depth in the drywall. I didn't wait for the HOA report. I didn't ask Lorraine to explain. I've testified in courtrooms where the truth hung on a 1/10 of a degree, and I've never missed. The next morning, I stood in Ava's bedroom with my hands behind my back. The sun poured in through the jagged outline where her window used to be, casting fractured light across the blood-specked floor. Her decals, the therapy clings Lorraine hated so much, hung limp, half-shredded by the bullet's entry. The frog was gone. The moon had a hole through its smile. I didn't touch anything, not yet. I'd already marked the floor the night before. This wasn't just a shattered window. It was a crime scene. I might not wear the badge anymore, but the training never leaves. The mind catalogs, angles, distances, powder spread. Velocity decay. Ava's bed was angled slightly from the wall. Her sketch pad lay on the floor beneath it, pages soaked through with blood and tears. She'd been sitting cross-legged with her back to the sill when it hit. I knew because I'd found a faint impact dimple in the drywall just past the baseboard. A bullet didn't stop at glass. It kept going, always. Downstairs, the neighborhood was quiet, the kind of quiet that tells you everything. We'd all heard the shot, the sirens. But now there was only the soft hum of sprinklers and a chorus of people pretending they hadn't seen Lorraine holding the gun when the police arrived. I found the HOA bulletin on the kitchen counter, folded, freshly delivered. Reminder, visual uniformity matters, the title read. Residents are discouraged from placing stickers, signs, or decorative decals in any street-facing windows. These items degrade our property image and pose potential risks by indicating vulnerable household members. Final enforcement warnings will be issued starting Monday. Signed, as always, by Lorraine Vexley. I scanned the list of addressees. We weren't the only ones who got cited. The Guzmans had a rainbow sticker on their mailbox for their autistic son. The Nair family had sun catchers hanging from their front porch. A few families had wind chimes. Those were gone now. She was trying to sanitize the whole neighborhood, strip it of color, culture, and anything she could label non-conforming, all in the name of security. She didn't enforce rules. She hunted for reasons to control. I flipped open the HOA file I'd kept on the counter. It was thicker than I remembered. 3 citation slips for Ava's window, 1 certified letter denying our exemption request, an emailed response from her that simply read, "Your daughter's health is not a basis for architectural deviation." There was no mention of danger, no empathy, just an unyielding obsession with aesthetics. I remembered the time I passed Lorraine on the sidewalk 2 weeks ago. She gave me that thin-lipped smile and gestured toward Ava's room. "You really ought to rethink those stickers," she said. "They advertise fragility, invite the wrong kind of attention." I'd brushed it off, thought she was just another HOA type, high on power and thin on substance. I didn't know she carried a gun. I didn't know she'd use it. Around noon, Officer Boone returned. She stepped into the kitchen without ceremony, holding her tablet in one hand. "We logged the discharge," she said, "but Lorraine's permit is valid. No surveillance footage on her property or yours picked up the moment of firing. It's circumstantial, Dr. Elridge." "She said it was a raccoon," I reminded her. Boone exhaled. "She did. But unless you can prove otherwise..." I pointed up toward Ava's room. "I can." She hesitated. "Lorraine claims it was a warning shot, fired low, toward the street. But my daughter's window is on the 2nd floor. The bullet came in rising, not falling. It pierced glass, traveled clean through air, and hit her at a downward angle, meaning the shooter had to be below her and aiming up." Boone didn't argue. She nodded slowly, jotting something down. "If you can give me your analysis in writing, I'll include it." I turned to the side, opened the hall closet, and retrieved the laser level I hadn't used since Quantico. "Not in writing," I said, "in demonstration." She raised her eyebrows. "You're building a model?" "No," I said. "I'm reconstructing an assault." Boone looked at me for a long time. Then she stepped aside and said, "Then let's see it." The clubhouse smelled like oversteeped tea and fresh carpet glue. 12 chairs circled the room, the kind of symmetrical layout Lorraine swore by. She stood in the center now, just in front of the whiteboard, reciting bullet points from a printout she didn't glance at once. And as I mentioned in last week's memo, visual disruptions facing the main street create long-term property drag. We're not just protecting values, we're protecting standards. She paused, letting the phrase hang like gospel. I didn't sit. Neither did Travis Mendel. He was standing a little back, arms crossed, jaw tight. Lorraine didn't look at him. Not once. Not when he shifted his weight. Not when he let out that slight sigh as she brought up Ava's window. Again. This incident has, understandably, caused community discomfort, she said, tapping her folder. I've submitted a preliminary incident report to the board. I believe it's in everyone's best interest that we clarify the boundaries of safety enforcement so that tragedies like this aren't repeated. Tragedies like this. That's what she called it. Not a shooting, not a firearm discharge that struck a child. A tragedy, like something that fell out of the sky. I stepped forward. Are you admitting that what happened was a result of your safety enforcement? Her eyes flicked to me, then away. I've already made a statement to the authorities. I'm not the authorities, I said. I'm the father of the girl you shot. The room shrank around the silence. Travis shifted again, this time not to move, but to look. Not at Lorraine, at me. He used to be military, I'd heard, served as a medic. He had the posture of someone who knew restraint, but he also had that tension. Shoulders stiff, eyes sharp. like someone holding something in because speaking would be too permanent. "I'm not here to debate guilt," Lorraine said finally, smoothing the hem of her blouse. "That's for the proper channels, but I'd like to remind all residents that escalation often begins with non-compliance. When neighbors disregard policy, it forces uncomfortable scenarios for everyone." I glanced around. Half the board members looked down. The rest avoided my gaze entirely. No one asked about Ava. No one asked why a neighborhood watch volunteer needed to carry a loaded weapon on a walk. Lorraine turned back to her whiteboard and clicked the marker. "We'll be issuing revised guidance on acceptable front-facing decor. That includes window items, porch signage, and—" "I'd like the record to reflect," Travis said suddenly, voice low but firm, "that I do not support armed patrols." Everyone froze. Lorraine's smile thinned. "Excuse me?" "I said," he repeated, "I don't support firearms being used in community watch activities. That wasn't board-approved protocol." "You're out of line, Travis," she snapped. "We're not discussing enforcement tools." "Then maybe we should," he said. I watched her mask crack just a little. The corner of her mouth twitched. Her pen tapped once against the folder. "Thank you," I said, looking directly at him. Travis nodded. He didn't say anything else. But that single shift, the first splinter, was enough. Meeting adjourned shortly after. Lorraine didn't speak to me on the way out. Neither did the rest of the board. But as I stepped onto the clubhouse patio, I heard footsteps behind me. "Dr. Elridge," Travis said quietly. I turned. He looked past me, toward the street. "I didn't see her fire. I need you to know that." I figured. But I heard her tell someone, before the sirens, that the kid was lucky. I stared at him. He still didn't meet my eyes. "Look," he said, "I'm not ready to burn the whole board down, but I've got a new cam set up on my place. Wide angle. I might have caught part of her patrol path. I haven't looked yet." "You think it's worth checking?" He hesitated. "Let's just say, if you're right about the angle, it might prove she wasn't standing where she claimed." I didn't push him, not then. But something had shifted. A silence broken, a doubt voiced. And in HOA politics, that was blood in the water. 2 days later, the bulletin board by the community mailboxes had a new laminated flyer pinned to the center. "Neighborhood Watch Patrol. Updates safety begins with vigilance." Below the bold heading was a list of vague talking points. Be alert. Keep lines of sight clear. Reduce visual clutter. But it was the line at the bottom that hit like a buried landmine. "Community watch volunteers are authorized to carry within legal limits." Lorraine Vexley, HOA president. She'd made it policy, or at least made it look like one. There was no vote, no motion, no signature from anyone else on the board. Just a statement, tucked into the middle of a safety memo, printed on HOA letterhead. I stood there with the flyer in one hand and my phone in the other, snapped a picture, texted it to Officer Boone. No reply yet. Someone behind me cleared their throat. "It went up an hour ago," said Mrs. Kelly from Lot 14. She didn't make eye contact. "She just made it official?" I asked. Mrs. Kelly shrugged. "Guess she's doubling down. Folks say she's walking the greenbelt again tonight, vest and all." I folded the flyer, slid it into my back pocket, and walked back toward the house. Half the doors I passed had blinds drawn. The others flickered shut when they caught me looking. That was the thing about Willowmere Heights. No one ever said anything directly. They used newsletters, noise complaints, and anonymous citations. But Lorraine had pushed things into something uglier, something that pulsed beneath the surface and never quite left. Inside, Ava was on the couch, shoulder bandaged, her left arm propped in a sling. The television was on, volume low, some animated show she wasn't really watching. "Dad?" she asked without turning. "Can I have the frog sticker again?" My heart snagged in my chest. I'd peeled it from the wreckage 2 nights ago. Found it half intact near her bookcase. I'd cleaned the glass from the back and tucked it into an envelope. I thought she wouldn't want to see it again. "I'll get it," I said. I went upstairs, stepped around the taped-off corner where I was still marking bullet trajectory angles, and opened the drawer where I'd stored the remnants. The frog was smaller than I remembered, faded at the edges. But Ava remembered it perfectly. I brought it down, held it out, and she smiled for the first time in days. "Put it on the new window when it's ready?" she asked. "First thing," I said. Later that night, as the sun dipped behind the hedges and porch lights blinked on, I set up the tripod. Laser level, camera, angle templates. I'd spent hours measuring interior distances and exit paths, but now I needed to verify exterior trajectories. Ava was asleep. I didn't tell her I was going out front. Lorraine had claimed the shot was aimed at a raccoon, fired toward the trash bins near the curb, but those bins sat 15 feet to the right of Ava's window and lower than the point of impact. I marked her supposed firing location with chalk on the sidewalk. Then I lined up the laser to the entry hole, extended the beam across the air, and walked into its path. It missed the bin zone by yards. The beam cut across space at a steep vertical incline, aimed directly into the second-floor glass. And that's when I heard the footsteps. "Doing some yard work?" Travis asked, nodding toward the laser. "Ballistic reconstruction," I said. She wasn't shooting at anything on the ground. This was deliberate, targeted. Travis watched the beam cut through the dark. "Yeah, it always felt wrong." "Still haven't checked your cam?" He shifted. I did. He didn't say anything else, just stood there, watching the red line hum through the quiet. "Did it catch her?" He nodded once. "I'm not ready to hand it over, not yet, but I saved the clip, just in case." That was enough, for now, because the angles don't lie, and bullets don't ricochet upward through silence. I sat on the floor of Ava's room with a roll of string, a yardstick, and a fresh sheet of graph paper. The new glass hadn't arrived yet, so the window remained boarded, its edges taped like a wound too raw to close. The Sun Cling decals sat untouched in a folder by the dresser. Ava hadn't asked for them again. Outside, the neighborhood was its usual theater of performance. Freshly edged lawns, identical garden flags, quiet driveways. But inside this room, I was hunting truth by millimeter. I had already confirmed the point of entry from the shattered pane and measured the impact divot where the bullet finally landed, just under Ava's bed frame. I laid the string from the chipped plaster to the base of the window, pulling it taut, adjusting for Ava's seated position at the time. 72 inches of clean air between glass and target. Upward trajectory, 28 degrees, not a drop shot, not a warning, aimed fire. I laid the graph paper flat and marked the angle, translating it into a two-dimensional model. On a separate sheet, I sketched the exterior of the house, mapping the sidewalk, Lorraine's supposed firing point, and the direction she claimed the shot had traveled. It didn't match. Her version had the bullet arcing downward, typical for a ground-level animal shot. But this one rose, clean and tight, through elevated glass and into the wall. Physics doesn't lie. The problem was, physics also wasn't enough. Not in court, not without formal certification. My analysis could be dismissed as personal opinion, no matter my credentials. I needed someone else, someone who could testify. I pulled out my old external hard drive, dusted off the casing, and plugged it in. It spun awake with a faint hum. Folder after folder filled the screen. Case archives, trajectory models, 3D renderings of everything from domestic shootings to military incident reconstructions. And there, labeled in plain font, was Whitner, C. Cal Whitner, and I had worked together for 12 years. He was the one I'd call when a case needed simulation under stress variables. Lately, I'd seen his name pop up on expert witness registries. He'd gone private, opened a consulting lab in Winston. I clicked the folder. Inside were 3 old case files we'd co-authored. I opened one, skimmed through the laser grid analysis, and stopped on the credentials page. Still active, still testifying. I picked up my phone. "Cal?" I asked when he picked up. "Mason Elridge," he said without missing a beat. "Been a while. You working something?" "I'm not, but I need you to." He paused. "What kind of work?" "Ballistic modeling, civilian setting, single shot. I've got the data points, trajectory, angle, and wall impact. All I need is certification and replication." "Police involved?" "In a way. There's a local officer open to the findings, but no official forensics yet." "Victim?" "My daughter." The line went quiet. "Jesus," he said finally. "I'm sorry. Me too. But I don't want sympathy, Cal. I want you to tear my math apart, replicate it, certify it. I need it to hold up in court." He exhaled slowly. "Send me everything, video, measurements, scene photos. I'll start tonight." I closed the laptop and went downstairs. The late afternoon sun was bleeding gold across the porch. Ava was asleep on the couch, her sling resting gently against her ribs. I stepped out quietly, walked to the side of the house, and retrieved the bullet from the evidence bag I'd secured the day after the shooting. Officer Boone had allowed me to keep it unofficially for now, pending formal forensics. It was embedded in wood when I found it. I cleaned it, tagged it, stored it in a foam case. A38 caliber round, full metal jacket, no expansion. I placed it in a fresh bag, labeled it with the trajectory code, and set it beside the drive for overnight shipping. Inside the bullet was a rifling pattern, a unique fingerprint left by the barrel that fired it. If Lorraine's revolver matched it, there would be no more deflection, no more speculation, just science. One shot, one angle, one truth. And we were getting closer to it. By the time the forensic packet reached Cal's lab in Winston, Ava had stopped sleeping through the night. She never screamed. That was the worst part. She'd wake with her breath caught in her chest, eyes wide, locked onto the boarded window like it might split open again. I started sleeping on the floor beside her bed. Not because she asked, but because I couldn't stand being more than a few feet from her when it got dark. I kept the laser grid up in her room during the day. Told her I was fixing something. Told her it helped me think. What I didn't say was that every beam, every angle taped to the walls, was another step in dismantling Lorraine's lie. The call from Cal came mid-morning. I ran the math twice, he said. Your data holds. 28-degree upward path. Entry clean. Velocity consistent with short range. I'm generating a digital model now, full certification. Want it under my agency header or third-party neutral? Neutral, I said. If this goes to court, it needs to be bulletproof, no pun intended. I also checked the bullet markings. Your measurement of the rifling grooves was accurate, but without the suspect weapon, I can't make a match. She still has it, I said. Police logged the permit, but didn't confiscate the firearm. He sighed. Then she's counting on this going quiet. Not anymore. That night, I met Officer Boone in the precinct's side lot. She'd asked to speak off the record, away from paperwork and protocol. You really believe she aimed at the window? She asked. I don't believe. I know, I said, handing her the data packet Cal had sent back. You said the DA wouldn't move forward without hard evidence. That's it. She flipped through the first few pages. Color-coded diagrams, bullet path, overlays. A render of Ava's room, with the entry point labeled. Her brows furrowed the deeper she read. She said it was a raccoon, she muttered. I didn't speak. I let her read. Finally, she closed the folder and looked up. If I submit this, it kicks off something real. She'll know where it came from. I want her to, I said. Boone nodded once. Then I'll put in for the warrant. If she still has the weapon, we'll match it. By the next day, Lorraine's patrols stopped. She was still seen walking in the mornings, clipboard in hand, sunglasses on. But there was no more vest, no more sidearm visible beneath her cardigan. The official HOA newsletter made no mention of the shooting, but a new memo arrived in every mailbox. Community confidence statement. Willowmere Heights remains a model of responsible stewardship. The recent incident, while unfortunate, underscores the importance of remaining unified under protocol. Let's move forward together. No name, no signature, just a seal and a stamp. But something else shifted that week. Quiet conversations on sidewalks. Neighbors glancing at Lorraine, then glancing at me. I wasn't the fringe voice anymore. I was the one people looked at when they realized something had cracked open beneath the surface. And then, without fanfare, Travis left a flash drive in my mailbox. No note. Just the drive in a clear bag, taped shut with a post-it that read, timestamp 21:08:37. I waited until Ava was asleep, then opened the footage on my laptop. It was grainy, but the audio was clean. A wide-angle view of Travis's front yard, sidewalk visible, Lorraine pacing back and forth just beyond the curb. She stopped, pulled something from her waistband. A revolver, raised it, not level, but upward, both hands. Stared toward the Elridge house for 3 seconds, then lowered it. There was no shot in the clip, just the posture, the aim, the deliberation. That was enough. I clipped the file, attached it to Cal's trajectory model, and sent the package to Officer Boone under the subject line, Intent Demonstrated. I didn't wait for her response. I didn't need confirmation, because Ava's scar wasn't an accident, and now neither was my next move. It was just after 9 p.m. when Travis knocked on my door. No text first, no call, just 3 sharp knocks and the silhouette of someone who looked like he'd already decided this couldn't wait. I opened it without a word. He held a manila envelope in his left hand. His right stayed shoved deep in his jacket pocket. "I told you I wasn't ready," he said quietly. "But after the flyer, after what she tried to post this morning, yeah, I'm done waiting." I stepped aside and let him in. The house was dim, lit only by the reading lamp in the corner and the hallway glow filtering in from Ava's room. She was asleep again, finally, after another hour of circling the same question she asked every night. Do they still let her carry it? Travis walked straight to the dining table and set the envelope down like it weighed more than paper should. "There's more footage," he said. "My front cam is wide angle, but I've got a side view too. Picks up a partial mirror reflection in a neighbor's SUV. It's faint, but you can see her hands. You can see the stance, the lean. It's not just suspicion now, it's repetition." I opened the envelope and pulled out the flash drive. Beneath it was a single-page printout. Time codes, camera positions, light conditions. "You logged this like a field medic," I said. He shook his head. "Old habits." We sat. I plugged the drive into my laptop, fingers steady. The footage loaded, time-stamped, and tagged just like he'd said. Travis had marked the critical moment, 21:08:41. I watched frame by frame. Lorraine stepped into view, her face reflected faintly in the window of a parked sedan across the street. She stopped, stared up, raised her arm. You could see the glint of the revolver, clearer this time. Two-handed grip, controlled breathing. Her shoulders rose, fell, and then settled. She'd trained for it. This wasn't an accident. "She's done this before," Travis said, almost to himself. "The grip, the angle. You don't fire like that unless you know what you're doing." I paused the footage, zoomed in on the reflection. It was ghosted and distorted, but the outlines were unmistakable. A shooter's stance, a fixed sightline. "She never saw this camera?" I asked. "She still thinks it's a dummy," he said. "It was a decoy last year. I replaced it after the mailbox vandalism. Wired in a new one, angle changed, lens shielded." "You're sure the mirror timestamp matches the main camera?" "Down to the millisecond. I synced them myself." That was enough for me. I copied the clip, added it to the folder I'd been building for Boone. The case wasn't just technical anymore. It was visual, human. She hadn't fired in panic. She'd aimed, braced, committed. "I can testify," Travis said. I looked at him. "If this goes to court, he added. I didn't want to be involved, but I saw the footage. I saw Ava in that sling yesterday, and Lorraine tried to issue a neighborhood-wide firearm authorization this morning." "She what?" He nodded. "Another flyer. She printed it herself. Claimed HOA legal counsel had approved private carry under a new defensive community initiative. I ripped it down before most people saw." I closed the laptop and leaned back. The case was assembling faster than I expected. Cal's trajectory model, Travis's footage, Lorraine's flyers, and now, first-hand testimony from someone inside the board. "Why now?" I asked. "Why not 2 weeks ago?" He looked toward the hallway where Ava slept. "Because I thought maybe she'd back down," he said. "But she's not backing down, she's digging in, and you're the only one actually pushing back." I stood and walked him to the door. "You're doing the right thing," I said. He nodded once, no handshake, no goodnight. Just a silent understanding as he stepped off my porch and disappeared down the sidewalk. I locked the door, backed up the footage twice, and wrote the subject line for Boone's next email. Attached, mirror shot. Confirmation plus witness offer to testify. There was no walking this back now. I didn't sleep that night, not because of fear, because of timing. With Travis's footage, Cal's model, and Ava's testimony if necessary, I had everything I needed to take this beyond speculation. But it couldn't just be airtight. It had to be undeniable. By morning, the house was quiet. Ava was still asleep, wrapped in a blanket too big for her frame. I checked on her, adjusted the sling where it had shifted off her shoulder, and kissed the top of her head before heading into the office I'd converted from the dining room. The walls were covered now. Angle diagrams, bullet travel paths, laser measurements. Lorraine's statements in print beside them, each one contradicting the physical evidence. I'd already uploaded everything into a single locked drive. Case WHOCT24. But the next step required more than storage. It needed institutional weight. I called Cal again. "Got something new?" I said. "Better than trajectory and reflection footage?" he asked, groggy. "Supplemental," I said. "I want a third-party peer review, not from anyone who knows me. You've got contacts." Cal paused. "You want to be redundant?" "I want to be bulletproof." He didn't argue. "Send me the drive. I'll have it reviewed by Dr. Vishwani in Raleigh. She's on the DOJ expert witness list." I packaged the files, 3 formats, redundant timestamps, labeled video overlays, and the affidavit draft Travis had started, unsigned but time-stamped. By noon, it was on its way to Raleigh, and while it traveled, I went back to Ava's room to finish the most important piece. I'd recreated her bedroom digitally, but I needed a physical replica to demonstrate the shot's impossibility in person. I rebuilt the interior corner using foam insulation board, layered it with replica siding, and recreated the impact angle using a rod and reflective thread to represent the bullet's path. When it was done, I rolled the model onto the front porch, just as Officer Boone pulled up in an unmarked cruiser. She stepped out without a clipboard or any visible file, just keys in one hand and a look that said she'd seen everything I sent. "Your reconstruction," she said, nodding toward the model. "That from Cal?" "Built here. Cal's render confirms it. I wanted something physical. Jury can touch this." She examined the angle of the rod piercing the mock wall. Her eyes traced the thread upward from the sidewalk to the mock window. "Didn't realize how steep it was," she muttered. "Lorraine said the shot was meant to scare a raccoon near the curb," I said. "Raccoons don't climb 15 feet in 2 seconds." Boone's jaw flexed. "She's got a lot of friends in the city," she said. "Board members, a cousin in municipal code enforcement. I've got a ballistic model, a forensic expert, a military medic with security footage, and a bleeding child. She can bring whoever she wants." Boone looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I pushed it to the DA this morning. Preliminary hearings on the books for next Thursday. They're calling it reckless endangerment with intent to harm. Might escalate if the firearm test matches your rifling measurements." "She still has the revolver?" "She turned it in voluntarily, after the warrant went through. We're processing it now." We stood in silence for a few seconds. "She's going to fight," Boone said. "She can," I replied. "But I've already won the one part that matters." Boone raised an eyebrow. "She hasn't been on patrol since Travis gave me the footage," I said. "And no other kid in this neighborhood has been fined since Ava's window shattered." Boone cracked a thin smile. "Well, that's something." She turned to go, then stopped. "Be ready. Court gets messy, even when the truth's obvious." I nodded and waited until she drove away before pulling the model back inside. That night, I added one final item to the case file, a photo of Ava holding the frog cling, smiling with only half her mouth, still healing, still hers. And under it, I wrote, "Truth is trajectory. It only travels forward." The courthouse hall smelled like stale coffee and disinfectant. I'd been here before, testifying, presenting, observing, but never as a father, never as the one who had something to lose. It was just the pre-trial conference, a formality to set dates and process evidence lists. But Lorraine was there, sitting in the row ahead, flanked by her attorney and 2 members of the HOA board, people who once waved when they passed me on morning walks, now pretending I didn't exist. She wore a navy suit. Her expression was perfectly composed, almost bored, no remorse, no flinch, just precision. The kind of demeanor that plays well on paper. Respected community member, accidental discharge, unfortunate misunderstanding. The bailiff called our case. The attorneys approached the bench. I wasn't required to speak, but I watched Lorraine's shoulders tense when my name was mentioned during the motion to introduce privately secured video evidence corroborating deliberate aim. Her lawyer objected, said it was speculative, said reflections weren't conclusive, but the judge allowed it pending full examination. After reviewing Cal's preliminary certification and the timestamp verification from the camera, that was the first crack. Outside the courtroom, Cal was waiting by the vending machines. He didn't dress up, jeans, windbreaker, no tie, but he held a printed binder under one arm and an evidence portfolio in the other. "Vishwani reviewed everything," he said, handing me the folder. "Her notes are in red. She backs the model, confirms your measurements. If you want, she'll testify as secondary expert. She doesn't have to, I said, flipping through the pages. You're the one who made this watertight. Cal looked toward the courtroom door. She's going to try to stall this, drag it out, play the community reputation angle. I'm ready. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. Yeah, I believe you are. I spent the next day preparing our own staging space, not for the courtroom yet, just a practice setup. The model I'd built of Ava's room sat on 2 folding tables in the garage, surrounded by photos, overlays, digital prints, and a laser grid I used for demonstrations. Travis showed up around 5. No knock this time. Just the sound of his truck door closing and boots on concrete. You still good with the statement? I asked. He handed me a typed copy with his signature and the notary stamp already in place. I'll testify in person if needed, he said. I know what she did. She's going to push back, I said. Call it misinterpretation. Say the footage was altered. Travis shook his head. Let her. You've got science. I've got eyes. We don't need speculation. We've got sequence. He stepped into the garage, eyes running over the model. The string thread I'd replaced with a red tension wire now traced the bullet's path with razor accuracy. Cal's impact point markers were color-coded and labeled. Every part of the scene was measured and reproducible. This is better than half the incident recon I saw in Iraq, Travis muttered. Because it's personal, I said. He pointed toward the corner of the model, where Ava's bed was marked with foam board. That where she was? I nodded. He didn't speak for a while after that, just looked. I've got 2 neighbors quietly asking questions, he said finally. People who were too scared to speak before. They want to know how she stayed in power this long. She wrote the rules, I said, then convinced everyone she was the only one who could enforce them. Not anymore. The next morning, I received confirmation. The DA's office had filed the formal charge, reckless endangerment with aggravated circumstances. If the weapon matched the rifling pattern on the bullet, the charge could escalate again. Trial prep would begin immediately. Lorraine hadn't commented publicly, but her lawyer had submitted a request to exclude all HOA-related evidence, claiming it was irrelevant to the incident. The judge denied it. That afternoon, as I updated my files, I paused at one image, Ava, asleep beneath the boarded window, the remnants of her decals gathered in her lap. This wasn't just about the shot. It was about every quiet abuse before it, every ignored warning, every shrug disguised as order. And now we were done being quiet. 3 days before trial, they tried to settle. Lorraine's attorney called Boone first, off the record, of course, said his client was willing to make restitution for what he termed a misaligned discharge resulting in unintended injury. No admission of intent, no reference to the footage, just a tidy offer with a liability clause buried in the 3rd paragraph. Boone forwarded me the message with a single sentence. This is a pressure play. They were hoping we'd flinch, hoping I'd choose a payout over a courtroom, hoping I'd avoid letting the public see just how much power Lorraine had accumulated through paper trails and intimidation. But this wasn't about compensation. It was about a child's room, a bullet hole, a scar. I declined. That same afternoon, the county clerk scheduled our evidence demonstration in a side room at the courthouse. A walkthrough for the judge. No jury yet. Just facts, models, and testimony. I arrived early with Cal and Travis. We set up the room with precise angles. Ava's bedroom replica sat on a raised platform. The red trajectory wire gleamed under the overhead lights, cutting clean through simulated glass into the foam board wall marked with Ava's location. Travis positioned his smart cam footage on a loop across 2 monitors. One displayed the street-facing angle. The other, the mirror reflection from the parked car. The sequence played in real time and again in slow motion. Cal stacked printouts beside the model, trajectory overlays, velocity decay estimates, and rifling comparison charts from the lab. It was clinical, cold, professional, but under all of it was heat. Lorraine walked in 20 minutes late. She didn't glance at the model. She looked straight at the judge, expression blank, as though everything in the room was beneath her attention. Her lawyer followed, already shaking his head. We'd like to note our objection to the prejudicial setup. The judge cut him off. You've had 2 weeks to review the materials. Let's proceed. Cal started with the trajectory reconstruction. He moved slowly, explaining the line of fire, the bullet's behavior through the double-pane glass, and the improbability of a ricochet from the street. He didn't embellish. He didn't dramatize. He let the angles speak. Then Travis stepped forward. I installed the cameras myself. Their timestamp synced, no alterations. Footage was saved directly to secure cloud storage and cross-verified using metadata. He handed the judge a notarized certification of authenticity. Can you confirm the subject in the video is the defendant? The judge asked. Yes, Travis said. And I was present that night. I saw her immediately after the shot. She said she thought it was a raccoon, but that's not where she was aiming. The room went still. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. I stood near the replica, holding the bagged bullet, waiting for the judge's signal. He nodded once. This is the recovered round, I said, pulled from the wall behind where Ava was sitting. It passed through 2 layers of tempered glass and soft plaster. Its rifling pattern was analyzed and recorded. I opened the folder, held up the printout. The pattern matches Lorraine Vexley's revolver, 5-land right twist, consistent with this .38 special rounds. The match ratio exceeds 93% certainty. Lorraine's lawyer objected again. We haven't independently verified. You're welcome to, the judge said, but I'll allow the evidence into the record. Lorraine still hadn't spoken. She stared forward, unmoving. When the demonstration ended, the judge stood and looked at each of us. His expression gave nothing away, but his tone did. This matter will proceed to trial. The court finds sufficient grounds for escalation of charges. A final scheduling order will follow. Lorraine finally looked at me as we packed up the model. For a split second, her mask cracked. Not fear, not guilt, contempt. She believed this place was hers, that rules bent for her, that silence would keep her protected, but not this time. As we wheeled the model cart back into the hall, Cal turned to me. You think she'll fight this to the bitter end? I didn't hesitate. She already fired the shot. This is just the echo catching up to her. The courtroom was fuller than I expected. Neighbors filled the benches, some with folded arms and stiff postures, others watching every moment like they'd been waiting for this reckoning far longer than I had. Most kept their eyes on Lorraine. She didn't look back at them. She sat upright at the defense table, suit pressed, face unreadable. Her lawyer leaned in every few minutes, whispering with a rehearsed calm, but she never responded, just stared forward at the judge's bench as if she could will the outcome through sheer stillness. Ava was not present. I didn't want her here. She'd given a deposition by video, short, clinical, supervised by her trauma therapist. She spoke clearly. She said exactly what happened. And then she asked if she could be excused. No child should have to relive what she survived, not in front of strangers. The prosecution started with the basics, the citation history, the public statements Lorraine had made about inviting vulnerability and discouraging weakness from being visible to potential threats. They submitted the flyers, the memo with the firearm clause, the photos of the fines taped to our door. Then came the footage. They wheeled in the monitor, dimmed the lights, and cued Travis's camera feed. First, the sidewalk angle, Lorraine pacing, pulling the revolver from her vest, pausing in front of our home. Then, the mirror reflection. The room held its breath. The second feed showed her arms rising, hands steady, feet braced. There was no flinch, no hesitation, only precision. The prosecutor let it play twice. Then Cal stepped up to the witness stand. He laid out the trajectory model piece by piece, math, diagrams, bullet behavior under short-range force. He explained the angle, the velocity, the height. When asked if the shot could have been accidental, he simply said, no. The defense objected. The judge overruled. When they finally called me, I didn't bring notes. I brought the bullet. I held it up in the clear evidence bag, turned it so the rifling grooves caught the light, and set it on the railing in front of me. Then I spoke. I've reconstructed shooting scenes for 22 years. I've been called in after hostage situations, officer-involved incidents, and international cases involving ballistic discrepancies. This bullet tells the truth. I look to the jury, not as a man trying to convince them, as a father who'd already lived the cost. My daughter was sitting in her room, not outside, not running wild, sitting, sketching. That round pierced her window at a calculated angle, Entered at 32 degrees. There is no downward ricochet, no coyote, no accident. There was only intent, and she pulled the trigger. Lorraine's lawyer didn't cross-examine. I think he knew better. They rested the prosecution's case at 4:12 p.m. When it was the defense's turn, Lorraine stood. Her lawyer stayed seated. "I'd like to speak," she said. Her voice didn't tremble, not once. She walked to the center of the courtroom and faced the judge, not the jury, not me. "I acted in the interest of neighborhood safety. I believe there was a threat near the property line. I did not aim at the window. I did not intend harm. Any interpretation otherwise is projection." She said, "interpretation," like it was a dirty word. She looked at me then, eyes narrow. "And some people don't belong in communities like this. They bring problems. They refuse to follow order. They make excuses for weakness." Gasps stirred behind me. Someone said her name aloud. She didn't flinch. The judge told her to step down. She did, calmly, as if she hadn't just laid bare the rot behind every rule she ever enforced. The jury didn't take long. 3 hours later, they filed back in. Guilty, on reckless endangerment with intent to cause bodily harm. The courtroom stayed silent. No cheers, no outbursts. Just a long exhale from a dozen people who'd seen the truth cut through the glass. Sentencing was scheduled 2 weeks later. Lorraine didn't return to Willowmere Heights. Her attorney filed a motion for home confinement pending appeal, but the judge denied it, citing the risk to public safety and the deeply unsettling disregard for consequence. She was taken into custody directly from the courtroom. No family waiting, no board members flanking her side this time. The HOA didn't release a statement, but someone taped a handwritten note to the clubhouse door the next morning. She enforced rules like a queen. She left like a coward. It wasn't signed. By the end of that week, a special election was announced. Travis was nominated for interim president. He didn't campaign. He just stood in front of the community and said, "I should have spoken sooner. I won't stay silent again." He won by a landslide. The first order of business, repealing Article 3.2 on window conformity standards. The second, a formal ban on any board-sanctioned patrols involving firearms, tools of intimidation, or unannounced property inspection. Some people left the neighborhood in the months that followed. Not many, but enough. The kind who never made eye contact. The kind who'd clapped politely during Lorraine's safety speeches. The kind who asked if Ava was dramatic when the bandage showed under her dress sleeve. We didn't leave. We rebuilt. The new window in Ava's room was double reinforced, shatter-resistant, and inset with a UV layer for glare reduction. But she asked me not to hang blinds. She wanted the light. She said it helped her sleep now. We installed her clings again, one by one. The yellow frog was last. She pressed it against the glass, held it there for a moment, then stepped back. "It's not perfect," she said, "but I want it to be there, so I know we won." I didn't correct her, because she was right. Justice isn't clean, it's not tidy, it doesn't fix the hole in a wall or erase the sound of a gun cracking through a silent night. But it's real, and it makes the next shot harder to justify. That was enough. The prosecutor told me Lorraine would serve a minimum of 6 years. If she appealed, it could take longer to finalize. If she didn't, she'd be eligible for release in 4, with good behavior. But no matter how long she sat behind concrete and steel, one thing had already changed. Her name was off the HOA directory, her patrol vest was gone, and her silence, the one she counted on to keep her safe, had fractured. It didn't take much, just a trajectory, a truth, a girl who deserved more. So, wherever you are, if you've ever been told to stay quiet, to let it go, to keep the peace, remember this. That window didn't shatter because we spoke up. It shattered because someone believed they could do anything and get away with it. That's what happens when people like Lorraine write the rules. But now we write our own. Subscribe and don't miss our next story. HOA president made my wife. Strip at the pool. She didn't know my sister's a Supreme Court clerk. Trust me, you'll feel it. And tell me in the comments, what injustice should we tackle next?